10th or 12th year of my prison sentence that I started asking myself these questions. Am I meant to die in here? Um,
Wow.
is this what my life is made for? Is this all I can do?
Welcome to the From Within podcast with Ben Osterveld. Hey guys, welcome to From Within the podcast. Today I've got a special guest here. It's not every day we're going to talk to a guy like this. I'm very excited to be able to share his story. His name is Quan Huynh. He is from Anaheim in California. And thank you so much for taking the time, Quan, and jumping on the show with me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ben.
So why don't we just get right into it? Let's do a little shout out on the book that you've got coming out. I actually asked you to be on my show before I even knew, but it just happens that he's got this book coming out. I just was moved to call you, but your book is Sparrow in the Razor Wire: Finding Freedom Within, Serving a Life Sentence. And that comes out September 15th. We'll refer back to that, but I just always want to make sure that that's a good shout out for what's going on in your life, and we can support that. But why don't we start with your backstory? Who are you? What you're about? And let's just go from there.
Sure. Yeah, like you said, my name's Quan Huynh. I grew up in Provo, Utah. Came to the United States as a toddler, probably not even 5-6 months old after we lost our country. My family settled there, and grew up around 99% Mormons and whites. So there was no. We were the only Vietnamese family there. And growing up, I never really felt like I fit in. But I really enjoyed Utah. But I do remember as a young boy always feeling like, why could I and my family not look normal like the other kids around us? And why couldn't we look like we fit in? And we would be teased. My father got diagnosed with leukemia when I was 8. Up to this time, he was doing a lot of community work. He was helping. He created the Vietnamese Refugee Association there in Utah, and helped a lot of Vietnamese refugees basically get readjusted to their new homeland, which was our new homeland here. But as a boy, I didn't understand this because I thought, like, why is my dad driving to Wyoming, Colorado, to all these neighboring states? And when I asked him, like, oh, he said this is a job, but when he told me he wasn't getting paid for it, I didn't understand the significance of what he was doing at the time. I just felt it was boring to go to Social Security, to DMV, just to help out other people when he's not making money. But that was where my father was at with everything. He gets diagnosed with leukemia, and his condition gets worse. By the time I was 10, and our family moved out here to California because our family he had family out here. California was also a culture shock for me because now I went to school with Black kids, Hispanic kids, and Vietnamese kids. And I also felt like I did not fit in with the Vietnamese kids because they accused me of being whitewashed. I couldn't speak Vietnamese well. Many of them couldn't speak English well at the time. And so I think there was always just this internal part of me that had an identity and acceptance issues. And it's basically what led me down into the gang life later on.
Wow.
Yeah. My father passed away when I was 13. And that's where I basically rejected God, angry with my mother, angry with my father, and found a lot of acceptance and like a place where I fit in later on inside the criminal lifestyle.
And so was it just naturally drawn to that? Like you had people from school? Is that where you found these guys?
Yeah, like when I was younger, especially even when my father was going in and out of the hospital, my mom was working. And then especially after he passed away, my mom was working full time. We were on welfare, and me and my brother were just running around on the streets. So we do what we can. Like we can't. I want to be able to wear nice shoes like the kids at school, but we don't have money to get it. So me and my brother have to hustle on the streets, and that's where it began. My first arrest came at the age of 17. By that time, I go into prison. I mean, I go into the jails, and I get even more wrapped up in the criminal
Gangs.
lifestyle and the gangs and all that,
Wow.
and came out even worse. And
How long did you serve the first time?
it was like 2 years, 2.5 years, right around there.
Wow. So you come out and you're way tougher. You're way more criminal. You may way more into that lifestyle now. You're harder.
Yeah, came out with a chip on my shoulder, wanting to prove myself. And then there was also part of me, like this internal struggle of, wait, I want to just be accepted. I just want to do what, I want to do the right thing, and I want to be successful. What did that really look like? I didn't know. So of course I enrolled in college. I tried to work, but then I was still also very attracted to the gang life.
What was it that was attractive? What was it
The
feeling
fast
in your?
money, the recognition, the women, like just the whole lifestyle. All of that played into it.
It
And it
almost
was,
sounds like every guy that's selling something online. Fast money,
yeah,
women,
yeah.
riches. It almost sounds a little bit
Well,
why,
yeah,
you know?
and it's placed where I felt like I fit in.
Wow.
Where I didn't, it's easy. Like when I look back now, I think at the time it just alleviated that shallow part of me to say, okay, I could fit in with these people. Because if I'm in a room with people that are smart and accomplished, that are talking about real things, suddenly I don't feel as much as I fit in. So this was an easier way for me to just um, basically run with the gangs and feel like
And
I belong
that you
somewhere.
belong something.
Mhm.
Just belong somewhere. So so we know by the title of your book, Serving a Life Sentence. How did you get there?
Uh, I got there in 1999. I shot and killed another human being by the name of Minh Nguyen. Um, I had come out of a nightclub and with some of my gang associates, and found out that some of my homeboys had gotten into a fight. Um, so I felt like, okay, here's my chance. About a few months before that, before the whole shooting, I had interviewed for a management position at the Gallup organization when I was working. This is like before their whole strength finders studies and all that came out. I was their 1998 interviewer of the year.
Hmm.
And I led like a double life. Like I was working, but then yet I still had my gang ties, and I still had my friends inside the gang. Um, so I interviewed for that position, and I was hoping that, finally things are going to go right for once in my life. Now I could be successful or whatever it is. Um, and about a couple months after that interview, they came back and they told me that I was not a fit. And the
Wow.
interview at Gallup, was based on their personality study. So it's all
Hmm.
personality based. And up to that point in my life, everything that happened to me or everything that did not happen for me, I could blame it on something. Like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. But
Wow.
when they're coming back and they're telling me the personality said I'm not a fit, I think that just rocked me to that part of me going back to something's wrong with me. I don't fit in.
Wow.
So I did what I knew best at the time. I remember I was like, okay, I took off early from work, went down to the bar, got drunk, didn't talk to my girlfriend about it, didn't tell anybody about it. About a week and a half later, I went to that club, found out my friends got in a fight. And, up to that point in my life, for me, I always thought an angry person or somebody that had rage is somebody that could scream, would yell. And because I never screamed or yelled or acted angry, I thought I was perfectly fine. But actually, I was just suppressing a bunch of different emotions
Wow.
when my friends get in a fight. I look back now, this is the perfect opportunity to take everything out that's going on inside of me and take it out on someone. And that's basically what happened. Because I wasn't involved with the fight. And when I went to the parole board, they asked me over and over, like, you weren't involved in this fight. Why were you so set on being the shooter? And I said, because I wanted to be the shooter, because for me, like this part of my life over here, I don't feel accepted or I feel like a failure. But in this part of my life, this is where I'm going to redeem part of that. and gain some type of recognition again.
In the
Gain some
gang.
stripes. Yes.
Wow. And so did you get arrested right away, or did you
No,
run from the cops for a while, or what was the story?
they investigated us for a while because they didn't know who did it. They knew our gang was involved. About 4 or 5 months after the murder, I was arrested in a gang sweep, along with some of the people from my gang, and they tried me for the death penalty.
Wow.
Yeah, because there were some laws that came out, and there was like, so they tried me for the death penalty for lying in wait, street terrorism, a whole bunch of things. But I had lied at trial. I had got rid of evidence already, and I had coached witnesses that were also involved in my gang, and I basically beat the case. But given a second degree, if the jury found me guilty of second degree murder, and I was given a 15-year life sentence, which at the time in the state of California meant a death sentence because there was nobody paroling in California. From like 1977 until 2007, not one single lifer was paroled from the state of California.
Wow.
So like
So you're like, it's over.
Yeah, it's over. I go, it's over. I don't care. I'm washed up. I'm ashamed to say, like, the vast majority of my prison sentence, I did not feel an ounce of remorse. I justified it and said, these guys had it coming. This is what we do in the gang. But it wasn't until
Was that just a story you told yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that's the story that many men tell themselves, whether they're in prison or not, about it's a script that we've told ourselves. And if somehow reality doesn't match that script, we could either reject it or that's an opportunity for change. But the vast majority of men in prison, and myself included, looked at that as, okay, I'm just going to continue telling myself this script, and what they're telling me is wrong because they're totally off, and I could become defensive about it or become angry about it. Yeah.
So now we're sitting here on a podcast. Okay. So obviously we're not interviewing you in jail, incarcerated. And so so what the heck happened from, would you serve 22 years?
Yeah. I've done a total of 22 years of my life behind bars. On my last prison term, I did 16. It was about the 10th or 12th year of my prison sentence that I started asking myself these questions. Am I meant to die in here?
Wow.
Is this what my life is made for? Is this all I can do? And then I reflected about my father's life and what he created in his 37 years on earth.
Yeah.
And I contrasted that with my own life. And I think I was turning 35 around that time.
How old are you now, Quan?
I'm 46. I just turned 46 last week.
Oh, cool.
And I looked at it, I contrasted that with my life, and look how much my father created and built and the impact he made on people. And then look at what I destroyed and how much death and pain I caused on the world.
What happened in you from being non-remorseful to then shifting to different thinking? Like, what happened where you're like, okay, I'm going to be self-reflective. I'm going to start looking within, because that's what it sounds like you're doing. Like, what was there something that happened in that moment, or was it just like what happened?
So people ask me this all the time. So I would have to say it's a series of things, which is, my grandfather passes away. My niece is born, and I see a picture of her. She looks like a spitting image of like my brother as a little boy.
Wow.
And then I started asking myself these questions about my father. On the flip side of that, also, I've always been a bookworm, and I was just reading a whole bunch of different books at the time, and somehow I ended up fascinated by books on the saints right around that time. What I liked about them was they were able to leave legacies, amazing legacies in this world, but yet every single one of them were also very flawed. And that's the stories I started looking for. And I go, man, if the saints can do it, then why can I not try to make something of myself, even if I'm 100%. Supposed to die here in prison?
100%. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was one day on the prison yard when it was just after like one of my morning meditations, and I had started to do this self-reflection and started to read books on personal development and personal responsibility and choice and all that. And I had just posed myself a question like, why does prison have to be punishment? Why can't this be a
Wow.
place where I could remake myself?
Wow.
And I realized it could. And just that thought right there, if I had to pinpoint one thought that kind of put me over the edge, was that moment right there. The sun was coming up over the hills. And I could feel the warmth from it. I could see the drops of dew on the individual blades of grass. And right above me in the razor wire, I heard a sparrow chirping. And
Wow.
I tell people, they'd probably been chirping my whole prison term, but I never once heard it. But that day, I did hear it. And that day, prison no longer was this cold, harsh, ugly place. It became a place where
Really?
became a place of like tranquil beauty, and I could connect with other human
Wow.
beings, that I could remake myself. And I looked at it as this is my place to rebuild who I want to be as a person.
Man, I think like if you can be sitting in a prison with hopelessness, and I've been to some prisons. Were you in Kern? Is that where you're from?
No, Kern is also in California. I haven't been to Kern Valley.
Okay.
It was near where my reception was though, but I was at different prisons.
So it's not the easiest place to be. It's like, and then somehow you find tranquil beauty in jail. What an inspirational lesson when we're sitting here and we're complaining about hard times, and you have given us an example in this moment that you can find tranquility and beauty in any situation. Then
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really important thing that we need to reflect on. If you can come around and think like that, and not just think like that, like you believe that, then anyone that's listening to this show, whatever situation they're in, like, can we find beauty and tranquility in our really rough and tough situations we're in?
Yeah.
So you're in jail. How does it work? How do you get out of jail when you're in that? No one's ever been paroled. Like, how did that happen?
Well, in 2007, a landmark ruling came down. It was a woman prisoner had fought her case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and she was arguing, what is the difference between a life without possibility of parole sentence and a life with the possibility of parole sentence? Because it doesn't seem like the state of California is honoring it.
Wow.
And she fought it up, and they came back with the ruling, and they said, you know what, that she has all the indicators. So they came up with a list of indicators of who could be found suitable, like could be deemed suitable. It's a person that has never been arrested, a person that has got higher education while incarcerated, had no write-ups, and like had a perfect prison record. So they gave out this list of factors, what they called factors of suitability. And then on the other side of the chart, they said factors that you could still deem someone unsuitable was like multiple arrests, violence, multiple write-ups while incarcerated. And I fell under that list for every single one of those factors of unsuitability. So even when I read it at the time, and I felt, this doesn't apply to me. And I started seeing some of the men go home, but those were like men that were in their 60s, had done upwards of 30, 40 years. And these were like shining examples of, I guess, what they would say, a model prisoner.
Yeah.
And then it was right around this time, though, when I began my process of change. It was after my sparrow and the razor wire moment. The prison, every time you go to the parole board, they issue what's called a parole hearing transcript. And it's the exact transcription of what happens inside the hearing.
Interesting.
And the men inside, they hold on to these, and nobody shared these transcripts with each other at all. It was just something like you held it close to your heart because it had all your ugly, dark, dirty secrets inside it. One man let me read his transcripts. He let me read his whole stack. He had 7 or 8 transcripts, and he let me read it, and I read it. And as I read it, it gave me an understanding of what's more in the board, but more importantly, it gave me an understanding of what we were talking about earlier, the script we tell ourselves. Because this man had told me, this is what happened, and this is what I told him. But when I'm reading the transcript, that is not what happened.
Oh, wow.
And but then also in reading it, it gave me an understanding. I go, you know what? I don't think the board really cares. I think if we just go in there and own our mistakes and own this and show how we demonstrate remorse and how we take personal responsibility for our lives, and how are we making amends, like those key things about showing a transformed part of life. And it tied right in line with what I was reading and what I was trying to discover for myself. So I sat with the man and I started coaching him. Hey, this is what I think you're doing wrong. And people around us thought like I was crazy. Like, who's Quan to show you when he's never been to the parole board? These guys had done like 30 something years in prison.
But are you saying 7 times he went to parole? Is that why there's 7? 7 times went to parole and they're like, forget it. You're still staying here.
Yep, come back in 3 years, come back in 5 years, come back.
Jeez, wow.
But they could deny you, especially now, anywhere between 3 years to 15 years for a denial. Yeah, so I started coaching him, and another friend of mine, my friend goes to the parole board and gets found suitable. And that just opened up.
Wow, with your coaching.
I'd say a little bit of my coaching, but a lot of his own personal reflection, though, of course. Like, I could only reflect back and kind of, ask him about certain things and just say, hey, you know what, I don't think you're owning this. Like, what does this sound like here? And we fumbled through the process, but in sitting with him and in sitting with other men, it was for me giving them my own sense of freedom that I already found. And what does personal responsibility mean to me? How has this been so liberating for my own soul in here? And that's what I'm trying to share with the men as I'm sitting with them. My friend gets found suitable, and now men want to sit with me to
want coaching.
Back then we didn't call it coaching. We just say board prep, but it's
board
coaching.
prep. Well, it sounds like you're doing human development. It sounds like you're doing personal growth, psychology. Like it's like I do a lot of coaching, and it sounds like what I do. It's like it's the human process. It's cool because they're motivated by the meeting.
Yes.
But that's the logical driver to working on their inner man. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Because I know every single one of them sat with me because they want to go home, which is fine. And I know I want to sit with them to share with them like this sense of freedom I've found in here already. Wow. Because people around me it felt like people thought I was crazy, but I go, how, they say, why do you walk around here with a smile? Or why do you seem so upbeat? But I was like, this is what I found. But they don't know this. So I used like what I found, and through some of the books I read, like, okay, this is what I believe. And I could kind of start sharing snippets with them. And what I found is over those last few years, I helped about 10, 12 men get found suitable at the board, which is not an insignificant amount. But I realized like that was just a small drop in the bucket of just one prison and one yard I was at. There's so many more prisons, there's so many more men. And that basically became the motivation behind my book. The men when the light came on, and then I got involved and started creating like groups on the yard, like a victims awareness group, or when I came to terms with my father's death, and it was 25 years later after he died, that's when I began the grieving process. And then understanding that and reading books on grieving, I had put together a syllabus and submitted it to a prison psychologist who loved it. And we created the prison's first ever grief and loss group, because I know men were suffering grief, not just from loss of loved ones, but, loss of family members over the years, or loss of their dreams, being moved to prisons. Like, there were so many forms of loss that they were experiencing and unable to process. And I knew what freedom it brought for me in understanding it. So I just realized, you know what, I'll try to make an impact and help people here on this yard. But then I go to the parole board in 2015, and the
Were
parole
they
board tells me,
so just give me 1 second. So this phone call comes in. How does it work? Like you just show up, or did you expect to be getting that phone call for parole or no?
oh, so you're given a parole hearing date, so
And
you
and
know
were
when you go
you were
to.
expecting that?
Yes, because I had a 15 to life sentence, so I went to the board the first time in 2013, because they take you 1 year before your parole.
Gotcha.
They call it your parole date, whatever, to determine if you're suitable.
Yeah.
So I went in 2013. By this time, I had already began my process of change, and I was already coaching some men. So I went to the parole board, and they said, you have too many write-ups. They said you're not suitable yet. You're still currently dangerous. They said, their whole spiel, and they said, come back in 5 years. So this was 2013. Uh, that became, there were a lot of people on the yard, because it's, in prison, it's almost like we live in a fishbowl,
Yeah.
and everyone could see what everybody's doing. So a lot of people on the yard, the naysayers, told me,
See, I told you.
yeah, they told people, he doesn't know what he's doing. How can he help you if he got
So
a 5-year denial?
discredited you because of that. Tried to.
And then, yeah, but even like my family members, I had received a letter from my aunt that broke my heart. She just basically said, like, I've looked into this parole hearing process in California. Less than 1% of people are paroled. I think the family is concerned for your mental health. We don't want you to put all your eggs in one basket, and like all of these tied in. And I go, man, even my own family doesn't believe in me. But I also realized, you know what, though, if I don't believe in myself, whoever would?
There you go.
I believe that I can do this. So that's why I wrote to my aunt, like, I'm not crazy, and I believe that I can be found suitable one day. But then more importantly, like, I've already found my freedom in here. This is just a path that I'm trying to lead now. And it's about making amends and giving back, and changing my life, and then
The
making
way
an
that you
impact.
could within your limitations, right?
Yeah. And yeah,
Amazing.
making an impact in there. So that was 2013. I was supposed to go back to the board in 2018. And I told my aunt, like, it's 2013. The board said 5-year denial, but I guarantee you, I will be home before 2018.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
I just felt that. And I put in a petition to advance my hearing in 2015. It was granted by the parole board. They brought me back into the hearing, and they found me suitable at that time.
What changed? What changed? Like it's not like the old write-ups weren't there. Like,
yeah,
it was like, what changed? Is this a miracle then?
Well, I mean, I would have to say my whole process of transformation would have to be some type of miracle. But
Yeah.
What changed? Because the way in the denial, it says, these are your reasons for denial. And I read it and I see, okay, have I addressed this? Have I addressed this?
See.
So when I felt I addressed it, about a year and 2 months later, I put in a petition, and that's part of the law. You could petition, you could submit one petition every 3 years to advance your hearing, but you have to make sure that you've addressed it all. And the belief on the yard is you should wait at least 3 years after a parole hearing before you ask a petition to advance the hearing. I put mine in at 1 year and 2 months, and everyone said it was going to get denied. But I remember I wrote in there, I said, I've addressed, the transcript said this, and I've attached the stuff I've done that you asked. And I respectfully request that my petition gets moved up. And they granted it. And people on the yard believe, oh, they're just going to bring you back in.
So all those naysayers, they still don't believe in you.
Well, I think it's
that's how it works.
It's a prison mentality of unfortunately, of a lot of people that are stuck in certain ways.
Yeah, because hope, don't have hope is the message.
Yeah. Or misery loves company, or, all of that ties in together. Yeah. But
so now you get granted parole. How are you feeling at that moment when they said you're good?
I thought I was so surprised, because I thought I was getting denied. even in that hearing, that was very adversarial hearing. You know, you want to talk about like people said, "Oh, are you okay with sharing your story? Are you okay with us asking questions?" I said, "Look, there's nothing you can't ask me that a parole hearing commissioner has not asked me. So
Mm.
I'm not scared of, you know, that doesn't bother me. Job
So,
interviews, they wouldn't bother me. Like
wow.
there's,
And so now you get out. What was that like? Like, it's a lot of years incarcerated, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like, you just don't just jump into life. What was that process like?
Um, well, unfortunately, I did jump right into life. I mean, I got my driver's license the next day, started working at my brother's company. Um, let's see, I had to rebuild relationships with family members, had to relearn technology.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was further along on my technology learning curve than most, because even when I was in prison, up until I had walked away from everything, I was still dealing with contraband cell phones, still involved with the black market and things like that. So I was familiar with at least cell phones, texting, things like that. But I didn't have that big of a learning curve compared
Mm.
to some of the men and women that come home now that have done 20, 30, 40 years and
Yeah, because
don't
like
even know how to take a
what's the
picture. Yeah.
internet, you know?
What's the cloud, or
Yeah,
what is
totally.
an email? Yeah.
So, Quan, I think you have a wealth of knowledge and you can give a lot to this world. And I want to ask you a few questions. I'm a dad. Okay. I've got
hmm
5 kids. Okay. I haven't lived your life, but I've lived a life where I've had to live on the streets, and I did a year in a rehab center, and a lot of pain I've went through in my life, and I feel like I've made some major changes when it comes to my children, and they're not going to wrestle with the what I had to grow up with, and I feel very proud of that. But I really think you're not the first guy people are asking for parenting advice, but you're the first guy I want to know about parenting advice. I think everyone and their dog loves giving advice, but what would advice be for you now? Like, you went through some stuff. Like, if you were to think how to raise kids, what's some advice you can give some parents right now from your perspective?
Okay. Well, from my perspective, because my disclaimer is I don't have kids yet. But
You were a kid, so that's qualified
yes,
enough, just so
yes.
you know.
hmm I would say ask and listen to the kids. To ask them what they want. I think about when I was growing up. It was my mother and my father like, "Yo, you're gonna go to this school. You're going to do that. You're going." So they never once asked me what I had wanted.
Wow. That's like amazing advice, Quan. Amazing. I think the world needs to hear that. I think that's incredible. Um, you, your dad died when you were 13 years old.
Yes.
If you spoke to a 13-year-old boy right now that just lost his dad, what would you say to him?
Mm. I would tell him I'm so sorry for his loss. I know what I wouldn't say is, and these were things I heard when my father passed away, was that he's in a better place, that uh, you know, that I'm a strong boy because I'm not crying.
Mm,
There was a lot of things that I felt, that I believed, like, you know, okay, I guess this is what it means to be a man. I think I would tell that young boy, like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be hurt. Um,
wow.
this grieving process might take your whole life, and it's okay. And I wouldn't tell him, oh, do you need anything? It's more like, hey, let's spend time. Like, tell me what you know, um, tell me things you liked about your father. Tell me certain things you didn't like, and just, you know, just talk to them and get them. I think try to get them to go through their own grieving process and let them realize that it's okay. They don't have to go by what society or everybody around says that a man has to be, or how the grieving process could look like. But just give them space I guess give them a safe space to begin the grieving process. That's what I would try to create. But I don't know
Wow.
what exactly what I would say, but that would be my intention if I was to meet a 13-year-old boy that had just lost his father.
It's amazing. It just moves me. When it just moves me. Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. Now I think about some people, including myself in some level. I haven't killed anybody, and I haven't done the time you've done, but I've done things that I'm not proud of, living on the streets and different things and hurting people. And sometimes I think about holding a debt. So I wanted to ask you, in something I want to challenge my own self, like, do I feel in debt? And how does that affect my life? And sometimes I think about that. I'd like to ask you the same question. Do you feel like you have a debt to pay?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, bottom line is I took a human life, like wiped them off the face of the earth. There's a person that's no longer alive on this planet because of me. Um, and then there's another part of me that feels like there's some amazing human beings that I left behind that were like in many ways way more deserving to come home than me. So um, yeah, that's a lot of the motivation for wanting to finish or to write and then finish the book was to hopefully try to, not only make my amends. Yes, I cannot bring back a human life, but I can show that, my life has been salvageable in some way, and that they can also make something of their lives wherever they're at.
So if you were to speak to a young kid that didn't feel like they belonged and they were moving into the gang world, what would you say to that guy?
Uh, I would ask him. I would ask him what's going on in his life. I would ask him you know, um, what's motivating him. What I think I would just have to ask questions. Like once again, just make a space for a kid to open up and share.
Wow.
Because yeah,
Wow.
because someone couldn't really tell me nothing, but I think if someone had just asked me so that I could earn some trust and then be able to open up and share.
That would have helped you?
Yeah, I would say so. And then, yeah, but then, but not just mouth the words. I mean, it might be very difficult. It might be challenging. It might take years, but I mean, if that's.
But just hold that space, hold that space, hold that space. Don't give advice. Just ask questions and hold that space. And
then when they want advice, they might ask it. Then you could give the advice.
When you got permission.
That's the way I would approach it.
It's pretty amazing. So now I can relate to not feeling wanted and not belonging, and it is a very horrible feeling. I could connect to emotionally if I really think about it. But if you were to think about like some kid that doesn't feel belonged, like how do you make them feel that they belong? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a deep question. Like, what would you do to make them feel belong? Because if you tell them they belong, it's like telling someone that lost weight that still feels fat. Like it doesn't help. Like, you're pretty, and they're going to be like, yeah, whatever, I feel fat. Like, words don't mean much, like how do you help someone feel belonging? So, you know what I mean? How do you feel that for someone in a healthy way? Or can you?
I think it would be on them to I mean, it's very simplistic to say it's on them to figure it out. But what I would do in that situation, is I would perhaps share to the kid of my own challenges of feeling like when I didn't belong in my life. Like, hey, let me tell you the time when I thought about this.
Wow.
I mean, that's the exact way that I wrote my book. I didn't write it to the man like, oh, I'm home now, so let me come from a place of teaching you. It's more, hey, let me tell you how I was capable of murder, but yet how I found my way home from the inside.
So just telling your story.
yeah, just sharing of my own failures
Wow.
and seeing my lessons learned from it. And so that's probably the only way I think I would be able to try to. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of kids that don't feel like they belong, and I don't know what I could say to them to have them feel like that. But I
Yeah.
could definitely, but I know I could share my own struggles of feeling like I belong, and hopefully, it could open their eyes in some small way.
So Quan, in the next 5, 10 years, we'll say, I'm sure that you look at your years different than everybody else. Years have been a very big conversation, I'm sure, in your world. But you got 5, 10 more years. We'll just say, obviously you live longer than that, but if you can, go ahead a schedule here and talk as if we've just finished the next 10 years. What would be an amazing life for you over the next 10 years? You look back and be like, this is what happened. And I love that.
Uh, I would have loved it to be able to say that I got my book into um, every prison in the United States.
Hmm.
That's what I would have liked to be able to say.
Wow.
That would be worth it.
Do you believe in meant to be?
Some parts, not everything, because
Yeah.
that could be a slippery slope. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had conversations with. Um, so, well, I want to be clear though. You mean meant to be as like this was all meant to be?
In a weird way,
That
yeah. And the
yeah.
reason I know I'm asking the right guy or the wrong guy in some level, this is a weird question to ask, but it's like I know what you mean. Like everything's meant to be, but I'm just curious if you believe that. Like if
Yeah.
some cosmic plan is in place somehow.
So my only pushback to that would be, I don't think I was meant to murder another human being to do
Yeah,
this to,
yeah, of course, of course.
what I meant to do, I think, is because of my own pain and because of my own failures, that I'm meant to try to give back and make an impact now and try to, you know, right the wrong or
Mm,
pay back my debt, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
makes sense. You know, I'm so glad that you're on this show. The audience that listens are going to be riveted, I'm sure. I think your opinion matters. I think what you've
Mm.
overcome is unimaginable what you can overcome, or what you've overcome. Your insight on giving space to have conversations, to ask the right questions is amazing advice on helping people. Like it's just asking questions to give them space to develop trust. Like a child, a teenager, like to make them feel belonged is the same system, in your opinion. And I love that. I'll be thinking about that. And it's very cool. Now we're going to wrap up the show here. Is there anything on your mind that you want to get your message out? Is there anything that you're like, I need to say this? I just want to make sure I give you space to that. I know that there's stuff in your gut, maybe you want to say, or maybe you thought maybe I would ask and I didn't ask. I just want to make sure there's space at the end of our show here to leave you a chance to speak.
Mhm. Well, thank you for asking. I think the only thing I would like to say is that I just one of my beliefs is that every human being can be salvaged. So just don't write people off that
Mm,
were incarcerated, or don't write people off that, regardless. I think the human capacity to change can come. Maybe although on their deathbed it might be too late, but there's still a possibility for a spark of change in people.
well, that is amazing. I think that's really, really good. I remember being in with Defy Ventures, which is where you work. I joined that. I went into the prison, and that's what I got. Is exactly what you just said. Because you bet I judge people, and you just don't
Mhm.
realize. That's just the honest truth. You're like guys in
Yeah.
jail, and I've been there, man. I've been in the streets, and I understand and people don't change. You start building this kind of belief, right, or whatever, and being in that process where we went to the penitentiary and man, people do change. People change, and to believe that is something I've got from going to the jail and going and meeting all these process. Like they actually do work with the people that show up there. Like why don't you give a little quick chat on Defy? It's where you work. I think that ties directly to what you're doing. I'd like to, give them a shout out. The work is obviously incredible. Why don't you talk about what you do and what part you play there?
Sure. I work as the post-release program manager for Defy Ventures out here in Southern California. So I get to help the men and women that are coming home from the program in their reentry process, whether that's helping them have a community that supports them with our volunteers and other entrepreneurs in training that have come home, getting them connected with some of our employment partners, getting them to come to our workshops, and just giving a space for them to also rebuild their lives. The program at Defy is called the CEO of Your New Life, and it's touted as, a program to help men and women with criminal histories to transform their lives through the journey of entrepreneurship and the lessons that you could learn in there. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And are you still taking people through that process, taking people like myself through that process where you go down there and you meet all the people and you go through that whole process? That's life-changing, just life-changing for me. Yeah. I brought my team down there, a couple of guys that work for me, and it was extremely special. So people need to look into that. I think I just want to make sure that we put that out there, because I think it's probably one of the most impactful things I've ever seen at the most impossible levels. And that's what's interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, you can always help someone, but these are people that believe that can't be helped, and they're helping massively. So I know that you're part of that, and that's great. So Sparrow, in the razor wire, finding freedom within, serving a life sentence, that comes out September 15th. And you said there was something about a pre-order. If you buy one book, another book goes to a prison. So let's just end with that.
Yeah. So like I said, the book is written for men that are doing long or lifetime sentences, but they would not be my customers. So to get the book to prison, for every book that's purchased, I will be donating one of my own to get into prison through Defy Ventures. We have a live site right now for book orders of 10 plus books, and the Amazon link and Audible links won't be up until September 15th for the book launch. But that'd be great if people could support on any way they want.
We'll put every link that we can find that matters to you on the show notes. Maybe when we do some social media posts, we will as well. But thank you very much, Quan. It's been amazing getting to know you. I'm excited to watch your life unfold now and see the impact you make in people's lives.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. It's our privilege.